Welcome back to the 10-second runoff powered by Culture Media with your hosts, Joe Mitchell and Alec Escade. Last week, we talked about some conference realignment possibilities with the Pac-12, the ACC, the Big Ten, media rights deals, all that kind of stuff. Not quite done with it yet. I don't think we will be for the next several years until this all gets situated. But before we get into the bulk of our podcast, there's some news about potentially Colorado moving to the Big 12.
Yeah. I mean, to me, right, is it more financial, you think, or is it more want to win?
Wait, on a what?
Want to win. Is it more the
want to win?
Yes.
I don't think that has anything to do with it.
It's all finances?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what all realignment is.
Right.
The thing with Colorado is it's very interesting because they were one of the worst teams in college football last year.
Right.
They had one win. They have a new head coach now. Obviously, Deion Sanders. They're in the limelight. They're getting all kind of media attention. They had the number one. Well, maybe not the number one transfer portal class anymore. I think Auburn has that.
They're the number one transfer.
They have the number one transfer. Yes, for sure. So there's a lot of buzz around Colorado, but we haven't seen them play a game yet.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot to be learned about Colorado. What's interesting with this is, we talked about it last week. The Pac-12, ESPN backed out of the media rights bidding. Looks like they're going to be on, what was it? Network USA, whatever it was.
Yeah. NBC USA.
Yeah,
Universal.
That's what it was.
Yeah, NBC Universal.
Something like that. They're going to be following up. Chris Lee knows best on Saturday nights. But yeah, it's weird to see a team like Colorado who had one win looking at potentially transferring out to or moving to the Big 12.
Right.
That does seem like the right landing spot, given that that's where they came from. They were in the Big 12 all the way up till 2009. They made the switch, so it would make sense for them to go back. But what this means is Oregon, Washington, Oregon State, Utah, they're all dipping too. We're not there yet, but that's where it's going.
And not only that, but honestly, with a team like Colorado even being a pretty crappy team, or at least were.
Yeah.
Obviously for the Big 12, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
With where it's going and everything, that's a good business move to me for the Big 12.
Yeah, for the Big 12, no doubt, losing Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Now, if they're going to bring on a Colorado, they need the production.
For sure.
Because you can't just bring on the worst team because they have some media right now.
Yeah.
They're going to need Colorado to play well in order to, keep up some sort of,
standard.
Yeah, to keep some sort of standard around the conference. But really, what this more than what it tells me about Colorado is about what it tells me about the Pac-12 is the Pac-12 is crumbling and
it's done. Yeah,
it's done. If Colorado leaves after USC and UCLA, what that tells me is there's 4 teams mixed in there: Oregon, Oregon State, Washington, Utah, that are the biggest names in that conference right now. Or once USC and UCLA leave, that if Colorado's leaving, they're out.
Yeah.
Those 4 are out.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't heard anything about Utah. That would be really interesting if they just stayed behind.
Yeah.
They'd win every year. It'd be an automatic playoff bid.
Yeah.
They've already won it with all these teams twice in a row. I mean, that would just be stupid.
Yeah.
But that's what it's headed to. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, so I think the moral of that story is the Pac-12's crumbling. Those 4 or 5 teams need to go ahead and find homes because it's not the Pac-12.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked about last week. We said we were going to jump straight into schedule breakdowns. Well, we're going to do that today. We have 3 teams we're going to talk about. But something interesting about this year is there's one team that has the chance to become the first program in college football history to get 1,000 wins.
Mm-hmm.
That program is Michigan.
Right.
Now, here's the thing about that. I've seen that number thrown around a couple times, saying Michigan with 11 wins this year. Obviously, that's including postseason. They're going to hit 11 wins.
Yeah, I mean, I think so.
Even if they go 10-2 in the regular season,
they'll win a bowl game.
They'll win a bowl game.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and they won't go 10-2 in the regular season, but
well, we'll get to that.
That's coming.
But okay, so the thing about this is I've seen a lot of people saying, with 11 wins, they'll be the first program to hit 1,000 wins. Does this make them the best program? Is it this huge milestone? Of course,
makes them the first program.
Of course, it's a huge milestone. But Michigan, the football program, was founded in 1879.
Yeah,
that's 15 to 20 years before most of the other major ones.
Right.
I actually have a ranking system from the 1880 college football schedule.
Right.
Or not schedule, but tier. The teams there, it's all Ivy League. Princeton, Yale, Kentucky, Michigan, Harvard, Penn, Rutgers, Columbia, Amherst, Massachusetts, Stevens, Brown, CCNY, Philadelphia Crescent AC. They're not a thing anymore.
Right.
Toronto, and Center. So none of those teams you really recognize anymore besides Kentucky and Michigan. Obviously, some of the other Ivy Leagues.
Okay, but let's talk about this, right? You're talking about 1,000 wins. Okay, no. Yep, nope. I screwed up my math. That's what I was doing, and I wasn't even close. So we have 1879, of course, to 2023. So 2023 divided or minus 1879. So they've been around for 144 years, and they are about to get 1,000 wins. So I mean, you're talking about, so what is that? 1,000 divided by
144.
Yeah, you're talking about 7 wins a year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's not bad at all over the course of 144 years.
Yeah. You're averaging a winning season.
Yeah.
My math came out to 12 the first time. I was like, that
wasn't
it. Can't be 12 wins a year.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
averaging a winning season, that's awesome.
For that long, yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. And they're going to be the first team to do it, so that's super cool. But what I'm trying to get at is, the Ohio States, the Alabamas, those Notre Dames, those schools that have some of the best programs in the country, they were founded in the late 1880s, early 1890s.
Right.
So they had a nice little jump start on them.
Right. And those teams are not far behind too.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's move past that and kind of get into their schedule breakdown.
Right.
So they only play 2 ranked games this year. That's Penn State and Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. CBS Sports has Michigan preseason ranked number 2. The 2 ranked games that they play would be 3 Ohio State and 4 Penn State.
According to CBS.
According to CBS Sports. They have plus 1,000 title odds. All the odds that we give on this episode are going to be from FanDuel. So just throw that out there now.
Right.
They have plus 1,000 odds to win the national title, plus 210 odds to win the Big Ten, and they have a 10.5 win total.
Right.
So what are your thoughts here before we get into the schedule breakdown?
I mean, dude, I don't like that at all. I don't like any of these. Plus 1,000 title odds is. Do you know where that has them by chance? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here.
4th or 5th, behind Ohio State.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. And of course we'll get into that here shortly. Anything plus odds for them to win the Big Ten also. I mean, it makes sense because again, it's out of all the teams.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be betting that. And then 10.5 win total. I mean, you can't really get higher than that. I mean, obviously you have, I think Georgia's at 11.5. I think they're the only team at 11.5. Yeah, because if Michigan's not, unless Ohio State is.
Nope, they're both 10.5.
Yep. Yeah. So that's interesting. I'm not going to speak on that too much because we'll get into the schedule and everything, but that's interesting. I like the over. I don't think they only win 10 games.
You like the over there?
Yeah.
So
I don't know if they go undefeated, but I think they'll definitely win 11. And of course, like I said, we'll get into that shortly.
That essentially leaves them room to lose to Ohio State or Penn State.
Correct.
And that would put them at 11 wins. I guess the 10-win mark would be if they lose both,
right?
Or split one and find a loss.
Maryland somewhere in there. Yeah. Purdue.
Now, granted, I think they do hit the 11-win mark. We'll get into the schedule here in a second.
Mm-hmm.
So do you, right? Or you think they hit the 12-win mark?
Well, let's get into it. Yeah.
So they open up versus East Carolina. They're 35.5 point favorite. That's a W.
Yeah. So that might be the one they drop. No, no shot. No, I think, 35.5. Jesus.
Yeah, so let's put it this way. The first 4 games of the season, they have East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, and Rutgers. They're going to start out 4-0.
Yeah, if any of those teams go within 21 points, I'd be flabbergasted. Maybe even 28.
I don't know about all that. They win those 4 games.
Yeah.
Though, for sure. And then they have a little road stretch. They go to Nebraska, to Minnesota. They get Indiana at home, and then they go to Michigan State. So that's the first 8 games of the year. I expect them to be 8-0 after that stretch.
Yeah,
I expect them to be 8-0 after that stretch and remain in the top 3 in the country. Yeah. This is where it gets tricky. This last 4-game stretch is really rough.
Mm-hmm.
They get Purdue at home. I expect them to win that game, but I think that'll probably be their
first test.
I think that'll be their hardest test to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Getting to your 9th game and having not really played anybody. leaves you super vulnerable.
Yeah.
Especially teams have a chance to be more battle tested than you. This one may be. This is a game where I expect Michigan to win. I don't know what the spread will be, but right now I would not be super surprised if Purdue covered this.
Yeah.
Okay, then they go immediately after that game. That game's on November 4th. On November 11th, they go to Penn State where they're a 2.5-point favorite.
Yeah, I don't love the line. You got to look at what happened last year, man. I mean, I understand it's a whole different year. We're talking about 365 days after that. But when you look at what happened last year, dude, they dismantled them. Like, they didn't beat them. They didn't blow them out. They shouldn't have been on the same field as Penn State. I mean, it was brutal. I'm going to pull this out of my butt. I think it was 42-17.
Mm-hmm.
It was either 41-17 or 42-17. I stopped watching it. You're talking about 2 top 10 teams, and I literally turned the game off. It was that bad.
Yeah.
So is that going to happen again? No. I can say that confidently. However, I mean, dude, 2.5 points. Like, I think that line's going to swing like crazy. We'll get to Penn State's schedule, but there's a shot that could be undefeated versus undefeated. And if that's the case, I still think the line swings like crazy. To me, that line's going to end up about 8, 9, 10 points somewhere in there, and I think they still cover.
So I don't think you're seeing undefeated at this point. I think you're.
I got to see Penn State's schedule, but
I think you're looking at a 9-0 team versus an 8-1 team in this game.
Depending on what happens with that Penn State loss, and if they are 8-1 again, I think this line swings like crazy.
Potentially. Yeah. So you're saying, let's say Penn State does have a loss by that point, but it's a beatdown. Then yeah, I could see.
Or a loss they shouldn't have had, or they're 7-2.
Well, at this point, Penn State will have already played Ohio State.
Right.
So if they have a loss that they shouldn't have had, but they beat Ohio State, then I think that kind of cancels out.
Right. Oh, I just mean if they end up going 7-2 in that stretch.
Okay.
Well, then the line will be wide open.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, if this line stays at 2.5, I'm gonna become a really rich man. They're gonna cover it like flying colors. I think
you look at Penn State though. Penn State on that defensive line, they got gashed last year against Michigan. Michigan ran for what was it? Almost 400 rushing yards.
It was over 400.
Yeah, they had 400.
I think it was 414.
Yeah, they had 400 rushing yards. So that defensive line, it's almost all juniors and seniors. If they can stay healthy and just keep that chip on their shoulder from last year. Look, here's the thing: when you're talking about a really good football team, you're talking about guys who have seen adversity, have played in a lot of games. Look at Penn State last year. Their only 2 losses were Michigan and Ohio State. Now, I know that Michigan game was a beatdown.
And also Ohio State by 13. It wasn't too bad.
But so I'm not – the point is I'm not trying to, Penn State got beat down by Michigan. I'm not making excuses for that. But because of that, there might be a little more fuel to that fire to come out and prove, hey, we belong in this division. We belong in the conversation that, we are one of the best teams in the country too. And being that those guys on the defensive line are experienced and upperclassmen, I could see this game I 1,000% see this game being significantly closer than it was last year.
Sure. I think that's fair.
2.5 is really tight, but I would not be shocked if we get to this game and it's still, single digits.
Yeah. Yeah, no, me either. I think upper single digits.
So I'm saying below 7. I could see 5.5, 6.5.
Oh yeah, no, I'd still hammer the line. The way I look at it, dude, I think this is a 15 to 21 point game. I think they really beat them that bad. I do. But just to clarify too, I don't think Penn State's the 4th best team in the country. We're not talking about Penn State right now. I mean, we are, but when we get into that, I'll get more into what I was just saying. But no, I think they blow by this game with flying colors. So
okay,
I think we're 9-0 at this point. Is my point.
I think they win it as well. I think Michigan wins this game. I think it's a very, very close game.
Yeah.
Like I said, I could see a single-digit game.
Okay.
So at this point, we both have Michigan being 10-0. Then they go to Maryland. They'll be 11-0.
Yeah.
And then the last game of the year, the game Ohio State comes to Michigan. And Michigan's only a 1-point favorite, meaning on a neutral field, Ohio State would be the favorite.
Yeah. So I'm gonna. This will be our first game prediction. I lost the game prediction. This is subject to change for sure for both of us, I assume, because I think this game is going to be pretty close. You're talking about injuries making a difference. You're talking about all sorts of different things. Mm-hmm. Right now, I'm taking Michigan. I think we saw what happened last year. They got drugged. I don't think that game was a true, I don't think the score was true to how the game went. I'm not comparing it to that because the teams are, Ohio State's a lot different. I think we have to see what quarterback ends up playing. I think we kind of know what quarterback's playing. But with Michigan, man, I think it's rough. Michigan's only gotten a whole lot better. I can say that with confidence because everybody's coming back that, to me, needs to come back. With that being said, I don't really know how Ohio State wins as we sit. I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout. I don't know how they keep it. I don't know. To me, right as it sits, I think this is a 10-point game if they suit it up today. With that being said, I mean, 10 points is really close. You're talking about a 3-point game that could possibly have a touchdown at the end, whatever it is. I think this game has the potential to be really, really close. But as it sits today, I think Michigan takes it.
Mm-hmm.
To me, right, that's their 12-0.
I could see that. Now, here's the thing. I'm looking at it from a little different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go ahead and say it. I do think Michigan wins this game.
Okay.
I do think Michigan wins this game. I don't think it's because they score a ridiculous amount of points. I don't think they just run up the score on Ohio State. I don't think this is a 40-35 type game.
Right.
What I more so see happening is I look at Ohio State's defense, and again, they've got seniors at key positions. They've got a redshirt senior, a middle linebacker. They've got seniors at the free safety, strong safety.
Yeah, they return their best tacklers.
Yeah. They're really good on defense. The problem for me with Ohio State is their offensive line is relatively weak.
Yeah.
They just went and got a transfer. They just went and got a right tackle out of the transfer portal a couple weeks ago. I think that's a nice addition.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a game changer. The left side of their offensive line, I want to say their left tackle, their left guard, I think they're both sophomores.
Yeah.
So I see this. I like Michigan to win this game because I don't think you're going to see a ton of production out of Ohio State in the run game.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be under pressure the whole time. They're going to have to get the ball out quick. They've got the receivers to do it.
Of course.
They've got the receivers to do it. But I think Michigan is going to win this game on defense. I could see this one being scored in the 20s.
Really? Yeah, no, I definitely disagree. I think it's going to be it's funny. You said 40-35 kind of game. I think that's exactly what it is. These two offenses are so overpowered, overpowering. Yeah,
They
now
are.
of course we need to see Kyle McCord, because when we see Kyle McCord and we see how he progresses throughout the year, again, he's going to be a high volume guy because they're going to be feeding the crap out of these receivers. So the stats are going to be there, everything's going to be there, but we need to see how he produces in a game like this.
And like you said, this is all subject to change, but
Right.
because it is the 12th game of the year for both of these teams. But, given that this is a first-year starter out of Kyle McCord or potentially Devin Brown, I think
Right.
we both think it's Kyle McCord.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless of who it is, you're talking about a first-year starter behind a, less than standard offensive line
Right.
for Ohio State. So somebody who hasn't been in this game before versus Michigan, who hasn't, been there for this rivalry, experienced it, been on that stage, and then against a team with a defensive line in the front seven, the caliber of Michigan's, I think they're going to make the quarterback feel it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Again, this is subject to change. If Kyle McCord has a great year and the offensive line can progress by game 12, which if they're going to, it'll be before game 12.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
So, but as we sit, I'm not the only thing holding me back on Ohio State is that offensive line, and just let's see something from Kyle McCord.
Yeah,
first.
and I think Michigan's going to have a better defense. You're talking about position groups, and I know this is not how football works, but like when you're talking about position groups, like lining them up and stuff, I think the only cake that Ohio State takes is going to be the receiving core. Now, granted, it's not flipping close.
Yeah.
But I think they passed for more yards in that game. And even then, I don't know how confident I am saying that, because again, you do have a lot of weaknesses in other spots like that. But man, we saw Ohio State had one of the better defenses they've had in a while last year. And they couldn't stop the run. It got pretty bad. It got embarrassing towards the end of the game. So honestly, yeah, I think as it sits, I'm taking Michigan for sure. I don't say for sure because I think it's going to be a blowout, but I think Michigan's definitely the better football team. And it's also in the big house. That doesn't really help Ohio State a ton. So
Yeah. I like Michigan too, but again, I think this is a rivalry game, man. It's not something you can just look at the paper and say,
for sure,
Michigan should win this game, so I expect them to do so. It's
Right.
a rivalry game. Crazy things happen. If you would have told me that J.J. McCarthy threw for 150 yards and 4 touchdowns last year, I would have been like, what happened?
Yeah.
So we'll see how it happens. But you and I think we both have them 12-0. We didn't disagree on any games this year. We maybe disagreed on how they play out, but on outcomes we agree.
And even then, I'm not, again, just to retouch, I'm not sure how it could be close because you make a great point. Like, or how it could swing. I'm sure I know how it could be close. I'm not sure how it could swing because look what JJ did last year. Like you said, I think he was 12 for 24 with like 150 and 4.
Yeah.
Or 124 and 4, something like that. And then, of course, we had a 200-yard rusher. So, I mean, when you look at that, and I can definitely, at least in my opinion, look at Ohio State's defense and say they got worse. I'm not saying they're bad, but they got worse than they were last year because they set a really high bar last year. Looking at that, I'm like, well, man, they returned everybody as far as Michigan's concerned. I don't understand how we don't see a 40-point outing or a 30. I mean, that's a little bit high. I don't understand how we don't see a 32, 33-point outing.
I don't know if Ohio State's defense got worse.
Right.
Yeah, we haven't yet seen that. That's not something I'm willing to say yet.
Right.
Look at the linebacker position and in the secondary, they're experienced.
Right.
They're just younger on the front. So we'll see. But again, with a weaker offensive line and younger on the front on both sides of the ball, it's just that's a horrible, horrible matchup for Michigan. I think Ohio State's a really good team. I think they're a team that can win the national championship. We'll talk about them here in a second. But yeah, I think I'm not going to get into their record. We'll get there in a second.
Yeah, I mean,
I do think they lose this game.
For sure. If you're trying to match up with Michigan, the way exactly not to do it is with a young offensive or defensive line.
Yeah.
Because that is what they're going to bring that, and they're going to bring the run game in turn. So with that being said, like that's where you don't want to be weak.
Yeah.
And so to me, like you said, it's a bad matchup for somebody going against Michigan like that.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So I think we see Michigan in the conference championship, both 12-0. We're not going to predict that game yet, but yeah, you'll see a lot of angry Ohio State fans. Even if they have one loss, you'll see a lot of angry Ohio State fans talking about why Ryan Day can't beat Michigan.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of, let's get into Ohio State.
I was about to say, yeah, we need to touch on that, but let's do it here.
Yeah.
I want to touch on that. I mean, go ahead.
Yeah. So getting into Ohio State, CBS Sports has them as the third ranked team in the country. They have plus 600 title odds, or plus 600 odds to win the national title, plus 165 odds to win the Big Ten, and a 10.5 win total, same as Michigan.
All right, so let's talk about the elephant in the room here. They have better title odds. That's fine because they might have to play Michigan in the not in the Natty. Well, possibly in the Natty, which, by the way, would be nuts.
Yeah.
But maybe in the playoffs, and maybe they, have them whatever. They have better odds to win the Big Ten than Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about it, right?
Well, we talked about it.
They're favored.
Yeah.
Michigan's favored. How does that make any sense?
At home.
They're playing at home. In other words, the same sportsbook said
they're favored by 1. I mean, that's a push.
I understand, but that same sportsbook said, yeah, no, we think Michigan's going to win. And with that being said, we think now to be clear, I will say this. They both have 10.5 win totals. And so with that said, we'll get into, Penn State, Michigan and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But dude, okay, so basically summing everything up, this sportsbook FanDuel said, no, yeah, Michigan's going to win. Well, I don't know about all that Michigan winning the conference, right? I think Ohio State's got a better shot. Yeah. Well, how does that make any sense? I don't know, that's dumb. But anyway, if you want to get into that stuff, man, I don't hate the title odds. I think if it has to go through Michigan again, it's hard to beat a good team twice. I think Michigan beats them. That's anybody's game. So the title odds make sense. Again, the Big Ten title odds, I like plus 165. I think that makes sense from a risk standpoint as far as they go. But when Michigan's plus 210, that makes no sense to me. As far as the 10.5 win total, I love it. I think that's a perfect line for them.
Yeah. So and I will say this about the programs at least. So I want to say Michigan had the 18th or 19th recruiting class last year. Yeah. Ohio State is the 5th. So they're staying towards the top
for sure,
at least in terms of reloading talent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's get into their schedule. They open up against Indiana. They're a 28-point favorite. Then they have
cover.
Yeah. Then they have Youngstown State and Western Kentucky. That's the first 3 games of the year. Now, if you remember how we were covering Michigan's first 8 games, they were pretty much all wins. They were all wins, like without question.
Right.
No real tough games. Ohio State week 4 goes to Notre Dame. That's their 4th game of the year, and Notre Dame's ranked 9th according to CBS Sports. Ohio State's an 8.5-point favorite.
Yeah, I mean, that's to me, that's a fair line. I don't know. I think they win that game. I'm taking a dub there.
Okay, and Notre Dame did just lose their running back, their starting running back, to the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they add Sam Hartman. I think he's a really, really dynamic quarterback. That's going to be an interesting game. This is going to be Notre Dame's first real test. They're going to be coming off a lot of momentum. They're getting a lot of praise going into the season.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be an interesting one. I don't know what Notre Dame's total is off the top of my head. Their win-loss total is off the top of my head. We'll get to them, in podcasts to come. But this is an interesting one.
This is a game they can drop.
Absolutely.
I have to see the Ohio State defense.
And here's the thing.
I'm not sold there.
This is one of those games it's an out-of-conference game for Ohio State. So if they do drop it, it doesn't hurt their odds to win the Big Ten.
Right.
So, this could be one of those games that,
could sneak up on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to see the defense because I do believe Notre Dame's offense is going to be legit this year.
Absolutely.
I think Sam Hartman with any offense is going to be that. So
and Marcus Freeman is above anything a defensive guy. So
that's dangerous.
I think that Ohio State wide receiver room can go. I know that Ohio State wide receiver room can go toe to toe with anybody and change a game really quickly.
Secondary, okay.
Yeah, change the game really, really quickly. So
can Ohio State's.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Oh.
Is Ohio State's receiver room.
Oh, I think you said Notre Dame.
No.
Okay.
They
could go toe-to-toe with anybody.
And change a game quickly.
Yes.
So, again, I do like Ohio State to win this game, but I don't love the line. Or, no, I do like the line in terms of I don't know which way to go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, dude, that's the thing with Ohio State and why it's so difficult. Like, we saw the Georgia game last year. Obviously, it was Stroud, so maybe we see different. But, like, dude, Marvin Harrison ate at will. Like, that's scary.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when I'm predicting Ohio State to maybe lose or maybe win, knowing that there's truly a player on the field that can just freaking get 7 points, kind of, like, that's nuts. But, yeah. Yeah, man, I got to see Notre Dame, too, because there's a lot of questions. I mean, we're talking about 2 new quarterbacks. We're talking about kind of a platoon swap with a lot of their, I don't know. I think Ohio State pulls it out, but dude, I would not be surprised at all if Notre Dame ends up being really good, and ends up beating them. I think this is a game, like you said, that I'm not gonna say can afford to drop, but kind of can afford to drop.
I think the recipe for beating Ohio State this year is attacking the middle of the offensive line.
Yeah.
I said earlier that I believe the left tackle and the left guard were younger guys. I was right about the left guard. The left tackle is actually a redshirt junior, so he's been there for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
But the guard's a sophomore, the center's a freshman, and then the right tackle was the transfer. So I think you've got to attack in that left side A gap and just make those young guys feel it.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that Notre Dame is going to do. They're going to, but the problem is if you're going to make a team like Ohio State feel it, and you're going to bring the pressure and all that kind of stuff, well, hey, they have the weapons to beat you if you're going to do that.
Yeah, and this is such a quick game too. I mean, week 4. So, like, you're not going to have time to really settle in, even as a quarterback or an offensive line, I don't think, yet. And like you said, with Marcus Freeman and everything, I mean, that defensive line is going to be good.
Yeah.
Period.
Yes.
I don't know exactly who's starting, but they're going to be really good. They just put a first-rounder in the draft. Like, they're legit. So, yeah, I mean, that's the recipe. You got to get pressure because – and the key is, yes, can they beat the pressure because of their receiving talent? Of course. But the thing is, those receivers are going to get open quicker than any receivers in the country. Well, how do you combat that? Don't give the quarterback time because they're still going to get open sometimes. You're going to have people getting beat off the line, beat deep, whatever. But like the more you could take away their skills and expertise, which is getting open, the better obviously you can do.
Yeah.
And I'm not, I don't know, because again, now we kind of have a 2-headed monster with them too, which rarely happens with Ohio State, where you get a crazy running back. Of course, Zeke and that kind of stuff. But, like, Travion Henderson's, like, really, really, really good.
Oh, yeah.
Probably top 5. Would you agree? Yeah. And so, with that being said, like, they do have that other, facet of the game. But I don't know. We'll see. Again, to me, it all comes out on that offensive line.
Well, and I think you have another player that we haven't talked about a lot that is really primed for a breakout year at Ohio State. You have, everybody knows Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka. They're going to be 2 first-round guys at wide receiver.
Yeah, possibly top 5, both of them.
Well, then you have Julian Fleming, who's a senior, who you don't see a lot of guys make it to their senior year at Ohio State, at least not recently.
Yeah, I mean,
go
ahead.
You see a lot of guys break out and then leave as juniors as first, second-round picks.
Yeah, but I mean, like Chris Olave stayed, Garrett Wilson stayed, but anyway.
But that was also during COVID.
Yeah,
It was a different thing. So right now with Julian Fleming, especially with the makeup of their team, with kind of the weakness of their offensive line, he's going to be a guy coming out of the slot that I think is primed to absolutely
quick hitters,
just dismantle teams in the short game this year. I think they're going to take advantage of that. Obviously, Marvin Harrison's not going to miss any touches. Emeka Egbuka is not going to miss any touches. But I think when teams do that, Julian Fleming is going to be primed for a really big day, specifically against Notre Dame. Like I said, I do like Ohio State to win. I just think it's a close one.
Yeah, I can see it being close. Again, I got to see. I mean, it sounds dumb. We're making preseason predictions. I say I got to see what whatever. But yeah, I think Ohio State takes this one. I think they're 4-0 going into week 5.
Cool. Okay, so let's go into week 5 with is they get Maryland at home. I think that's a beatdown.
Yeah, me too.
Beatdown. Then they go to Purdue. We talked about Michigan getting Purdue in their 9th game of the year. Michigan gets them 2 weeks after Notre Dame. Might still be a little bit banged up. I don't think it'll matter. I think, especially if they have a loss at this point, they're going to absolutely beat the brakes off Purdue.
Yeah.
But regardless, I think they win this one.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
This is where it gets tricky. So Ohio State's a battle-tested team at this point. They've played Notre Dame. Whether they win or lose, I think it's close. I do think they win a close one. But then going into their 7th game of the year, they get Penn State at home. They're a 10.5-point favorite, which is a larger favorite than Michigan was.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, it's not close. They're an extra touchdown on top of Michigan's. That's dumb. Again, yes, it's because of matchups and stuff, but that's – and keep in mind, too, we're so preseason that all of these numbers are going to change. Mm-hmm. So none of these numbers really matter. However, I don't know that I love the line. I think they I think they take the game. I do. I don't know that they beat them by 11 points. I don't. So I think Singletary's going to have a stupid game. I'm talking about 150 plus, just like I think Corum's going to do, and we talked about that a little bit. But I think Singleton's going to be able to go crazy. Did I say Singletary the first time? I did. I think Singleton's able to go crazy. Man, I think they beat him, but I don't think they beat him by 11 points.
So this will be our first disagreement.
Okay.
I'm actually going to take Penn State in this one.
Okay.
Again, in a very close game. I think this is a very close game that comes down right to the end. But I could, I like Penn State to win this one because of Nick Singleton. Yeah. Like I said, Ohio State's defense is a lot younger on the front 7. Mm-hmm. Not even necessarily the front 7, just the defensive line.
Right.
Where you flip the side of the ball, Penn State's defense is
offensive line. Oh, okay,
no, their defense. Penn State's defense is you got juniors and seniors at every position except for I believe the nickelback, which is a sophomore. But other than that, you're just not in your nickel package, and you got nothing but experience on the field.
You sniped that, by the way.
Huh?
You sniped that, by the way.
Did I?
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Everybody but the nickel.
And then you have and these are all guys who've played in big time games and seasons with 10 wins, and this is a team that's hungry, that's been nothing but overlooked for years and years and years behind Ohio State and Michigan.
Yeah.
I think if there's a time to do it, if there's a year to do it, it's this one with an Ohio State team who's weaker in the trenches.
Yeah.
I think Penn State actually matches up really well against them with the experience in the secondary and with the kind of powerhouse that is Nick Singleton in the backfield.
Yeah. So good.
I think Penn State comes away with this one. I think it's a very, very close game. It's not one that Penn State controls the entire 4 quarters. They just find a way to win in the 4th.
And let's be clear, they almost did this year.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a 13-point game, but realistically, it was not. It was a 1-possession game. They ended up scoring. I don't remember if it was a fumble or a pick 6. I want to say it was a fumble 6, but they ended up scoring on some crap late. They really almost pulled out a win against them this year. Again, I've alluded to the fact that I think Ohio State's not going to be as good as they were last year. I think Penn State's got a shot to be a little bit better. So, I mean, if you just take that, yeah. Another thing is you talked about the inexperience versus the experience on the D lines. When you look at, and I know we've talked about Ohio State's offensive line. When you look at Penn State's offensive line, you're talking about redshirt sophomore, so third-year player. And then you're talking about a redshirt senior, redshirt senior, redshirt senior, redshirt senior.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're talking about just the most experienced, one of the most experienced lines. That doesn't, again, bode well for Ohio State's chances. However, with Penn State losing some talent in the secondary, that's, again, when you're talking about matchups, that's not what you want to do against Ohio State. Again, I think it's going to be close. Again, I wouldn't be – I mean, I'm predicting a close game. If the other person comes out – or if the other team comes out on top, I'm not surprised. But I think Ohio State pulls this out.
Yeah, I think they scheme well for it. I know you mentioned they lost some talent. I think with a defensive line that stout and that experienced, I think what they'll be able to do is just, hey, they'll be able to sit in that nickel or throw a dime on the field and just blanket over the, if they're going to throw the ball all over you, they're going to have to do it with small ball, in my opinion. I think Penn State's going to make them throw the short ball. I don't think Ohio State's scared to do that.
I was about to say, I think they're built for it.
I think they will do that.
Yeah.
But I don't think this is a game that Ohio State's going to be able to win by just airing it out 40 yards down the field. I think Penn State's going to make them throw the short ball or beat them between the tackles, and I don't think they can do the latter.
See, I have such a hard time with Ohio State because we've seen beatdowns both ways. And then, like, the biggest thing for me was their loss against Georgia. Like, the way that I've never seen a passing attack like that. What they did with Marvin Harrison, and I don't even know if it was a full 3 quarters, was the craziest thing I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
Like, the way that he was, like I was talking about a little bit earlier, able to take over like that. Well, he comes back 365 days more trained.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, well, this is going to be dumb.
Yeah.
And so, man, I don't know. It's yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm at a loss for words, I guess. But no, again, I think they take it. But
okay. So at this point, you have them 7-0.
I like your take, though, man. I do like your take because that would be exactly why. And again, I could see it happening. I don't know. I don't think it will.
Yeah.
I think it's close.
So at this point, you have them 7-0. I have them 6-1. Going into their 8th game of the year, that's October 28th. They go to Wisconsin, who is, the 3rd ranked team they'll play in 8 games.
Well, then a span of 5. Yeah.
Yeah. They go to Wisconsin, and Wisconsin, by the way, has plus 650 odds to win the title or to win the conference. That's just
to win the title.
Well, the conference title.
No, I know. I was laughing.
But that's just because they're in the other division.
Yeah.
That means they're the heavy favorite to win the West.
Which, okay, yeah,
is interesting because I do think the Big Ten West is going to be a lot tighter this year. I think
too.
there's a lot of teams that are kind of in the same situation, but we're not talking about that right now. I think Ohio State. I think especially if they're coming off a loss to Penn State, I think they come out and just absolutely obliterate Wisconsin.
Beat down. Yeah,
yeah, me too.
Beat down.
I think even if you're right and Ohio State wins a close one against Penn State at home, I think the onus is on them to come out and show, okay, hey, we are who we say we are. We're going to demolish Wisconsin. They're not even in the conversation for the Big Ten, and we need to show everybody what's going to happen in that Week 12 game.
It's basically right.
So I think regardless of whether they win or lose to Penn State in Week 7, they're going to come out and beat the brakes off Wisconsin in Week 8.
Agreed. I think it could get really ugly.
Yeah, me too. All right, then 9, 10, 11. They go to Rutgers. They get Michigan State at home, and they get Minnesota at home. I think those are all 3 wins.
Yeah, they're a 24.5 point favorite against Michigan State.
Yeah.
And again, if we refer back to what we were talking about with Michigan, they're a 19.5 point favorite against Michigan State. They're funny. I don't know.
Why does that bother you
it's
so
just
much?
Dumb. It's like, okay, what about when these 2 teams play? Okay, that one's going to win. Okay, but what about when those teams play other teams? Oh, that one's going to be way better. It's not going to be close. Well, what? Anyway.
Okay, so
I just need to get on FanDuel tonight. That's all you're telling me. I should go check out what FanDuel's got to say because, man.
All right, so at this point, I
poor.
have Ohio State 10-1. You have them 11-0. So what you have is Ohio State and Michigan going into Week 12, both 11-0. Now, we already talked about this game. We both already said that we think Michigan wins it.
Yeah.
So you have Ohio State as an 11-1 team. I have them as a 10-2 team to finish the regular season.
Yeah, so disclaimer too, that's what happened last year. I'm not just like, oh, it'll go like last year. I don't think that's the case. I think there's games that were closer that won't be. I think there's games that were blowouts that won't be. But I truly think they're 2 of the best teams in college football. One's just better and they play. So I think one goes 12-0, one goes 11-1. Well, okay, no, I already made that prediction. Never mind. I was like, so there's my prediction, but I forgot I already made that. Yeah, I think they lose a decently close one.
Yeah,
I think the Penn State game's closer than this one.
You do?
Yeah, I think they beat Penn State by lesser of a margin than they get beat by Michigan. I said that right. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I think Penn State is closer to them than they are to Michigan. I don't think it's by a ton.
I think Penn State wins. So
right, exactly. So you're not too far from me, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think they lose by whatever I said.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound dumb.
I
think they lose by 1 possession, 7 or 8 points.
I could see that. That's what I said. I said I think they lose by 1 possession. You said it was more than that.
I don't know, man. Again, the problem is I look at last year and it's a decent tell because, again, you don't lose a ton. Michigan's the same football team to me, and they're not. But to me, right, I'm looking at all the weapons. I'm like, man, Michigan's just going to be really good again. Do it the same way they did it last year. Obviously, Kyle McCord steps in for Stroud, and we don't really lose anything else as far as the offense goes other than the O-line. And so looking at it, right, you're losing a top 5, draft pick. Or top 10 draft pick, I don't know where he got drafted, in Paris Johnson. Like, that hurts. You're losing other offensive linemen. That hurts. And so, man, I have to go bigger than that. I'm going 10 to 15 points.
Yeah.
Because they got blown out last year. They got, what was it? It was a 20, I think it was 44-25 or something.
Yeah, but it wasn't a blowout until the fourth with those,
I know.
Those 2 big breakaway runs.
But, I mean, I'm predicting score. I mean, that.
Yeah.
I think they get beat by 2 possessions. You're right.
All right, so I just think the moral of the story here is there's 3 really, really good teams that we're talking about.
Yeah.
With Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. I think Penn State's a little bit better than you think they are. But
you think they're a better football team than Ohio State, or you think that it's a matchup thing?
I think it's a matchup thing.
Okay.
I think it's a matchup thing. And that's the thing is looking at this, I think people are going to see that I'm, projecting Ohio State to go 10-2 with losses to Michigan and Penn State and be like, you're insane. Like, well, no, I think Ohio State's a really good team who also is capable of winning a national title. I just think when looking at the matchups and where they fall on the schedule, I think those are 2 very easily losable games for them.
I would agree. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into Penn State. Penn State's got plus 2,000 odds to win the national championship, plus 500 odds to win the Big Ten, and they only have a 9.5 win total.
Yeah. So
they also recruited the 13th ranked class last year, by the way.
Yeah, which is really impressive. And again, the team that I have sweeping, right, is Denton, that finished behind both of these teams.
Yeah,
In recruiting, yeah. Well, I mean, it kind of sucks. I mean, everybody knows where this is going.
Well, no, I mean the rest of the schedule.
So yeah. I mean, I like all the odds for this one. This is the first one that I've been like, yep, and okay, yeah, that makes sense. So I like this one. 9.5 makes sense to me. I don't really have anything on the odds. I thought I would.
If you're just tuning in to watch the clip on our Clips account of Penn State, then hang around. You'll hear everything we're saying. If you've been watching the whole podcast, you already know. I think they hit the over in the win total.
Yeah, I think they hit 10.
Yeah, but look at wide receiver. They bring in Dante Cephas. I think that's a huge addition. Not to mention that they have Nick Singleton and Drew Allar in the backfield. I think the addition of Dante Cephas is like massive, just massive for them on the offensive side of the ball.
I would stretch to say that they have the second best running back core when you're talking about just 1-2 in the country. Nick Singleton and then Katron Allen. I mean, those two are different.
Yeah. Unfortunately for them, you just have Michigan as being number 1.
Yeah. No, and that's not close either.
Yeah.
So that's and dude, you got to look at it, man. That's what you run into. You're talking about 3 defenses that will be, I'll say elite. You're talking about all 3 of these teams. You're talking about elite defenses. You're also talking about offenses that can go score. One's got the best receiving core in the country, and it's not close. One's got the best running back core in the country, and it's not close. And then you kind of have, I'm glad you alluded to the fact that this is going to be a clip because I'm gonna be a little bit better. But man, and then I'm not going to say the great value version, but you have a little bit watered down of both. You have a great team, solid across the board. You have a good receiving core, and again, got better in the offseason. Yeah. And you have a great running back core.
Yeah.
They're just not touching these other. And then again, we talk about like the O-line in Michigan. Like, it's just rough, man. They're in a rough spot. And I beat this dead horse every freaking podcast, it seems like. But let's get into the schedule.
Yeah. So the first 4 games of the year, they get West Virginia at home, they get Delaware at home, then they go to Illinois, and they get Iowa at home. So this one's interesting. They're the only team of the 2 we talked about who play Iowa out of the West.
Mm-hmm.
I think we both agree that they open up 3-0.
Yeah.
Very much so. We
Okay.
both agree they open up 3-0 to West Virginia, Delaware, and Illinois.
Yeah.
Iowa's an interesting one.
You think?
They're minus. Well, just hear me out. They're minus 10. They're only a 10-point favorite in this game. They get them at home.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume you are taking them to win this game.
Yeah, I take them to cover.
Okay, by 10.
Easy.
Okay.
They might cover by 10.
Yeah, so win the 20-point win.
Yeah, man. I mean, where is that coming from? Iowa's got a great defense, but they might not score 10. This rule of 10s is going really well. Yeah. I mean, I just
Potentially, I could see that, but I think when you're talking about I think you're talking about a matchup like this. I think Iowa, I don't think they're going to score a ton of points. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying Penn State's got a really good defense. Iowa's not going to score a lot of points, but Iowa also has a very, very good defense.
yeah, probably better than Penn State.
And again, we haven't seen a ton of Drew Alar yet. They bring in a transfer at wide receiver. All the reasons that I really like Penn State, I think, play into Iowa's hands here because of how good Iowa's defense is.
Mm-hmm.
I think Iowa's going to find a way to try and make them be one-dimensional, and they're just going to hone in on that and try and bracket Nick Singleton.
Right.
Now, I don't think they'll be able to do it the entirety of the game.
I don't think they'll be able to do it at all.
No, I think it'll be a close game. I think I could see Penn State covering, but I don't think by a lot. I don't think they win by more than 14.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they only won by 14. But
I do think they win this game, but I think it's a very interesting matchup that a lot of people are going to see and be like, why is this so close?
yeah.
I think there's real reasons why this spread is so close, and I could see it, I could see it being a nail biter for someone who put money on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is their first real test too. To me, this is Penn State's coming out party, basically.
Yeah.
Like this is their okay, yes, we beat our 3 cupcakes. Like we're gunning for Michigan, we're gunning for Ohio State. Watch this.
Yeah.
Like that's what this is to me. And so where this is on the schedule, this is a busted wide open kind of game for me. Sorry. I mean, this is a 25-point kind of affair.
I wouldn't be incredibly shocked to see that. I think Penn State's good enough to do that.
Right.
But I just think looking at the matchups, I also would not be surprised if they only won by 10. Like if it was a push.
Right. And keep in mind, I'm talking about like a 31-7.
I would absolutely be shocked to see Iowa win, though. Let me clarify that.
Sure.
I'm saying I think it'll be a close game, but I do not expect Iowa to win this game.
Yeah, I'm looking at like 31-7. Like again, I don't think Iowa's putting up freaking any points. And again, I don't think, because you're also probably talking about Penn State coming off of 3 games where they do score. Well, not really. They play Illinois. I mean, they play 2 of the top 5 defenses back to back, and then get another one later. So that kind of blows. But anyway, but yeah, man, I think this is their form of a coming out party. I think this is a like blowout. I do. 25.
Yeah. Okay, well then, so we both have them 4-0.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of skipped over that Illinois game, but Illinois got a good defense, but I just don't think they're going to hang around. Like I don't think they're going to win the West this year. They were the favorite to win the West about mid-season last year and couldn't do it. Purdue ended up winning it.
Right.
I could see that being a decent game through a half, but I think Penn State wins that by more than they beat Iowa.
Yeah. I think that's probably going to be a 17-point spread.
Yeah.
Based on what I'm seeing with Iowa at least, and I would assume they again, I'm looking at like a push kind of situation.
Yeah.
I think they're somewhere around that 17-point win.
Okay, so 4-0, we both agree there. Then they go to Northwestern and they get UMass at home, win-win. Now, this is game 7 for Penn State. They get Ohio State. They're plus 10.5 point, or they're a 10.5 point underdog here. Again, if you're just tuned in for the Penn State clip, you might be excited. If if you've watched the whole time, you already know my prediction here. You want to get into this?
Yeah, man, I'm taking Ohio State. I'm looking at a possible cover, probably not. If I'm betting points today, I'm taking Penn State's points. However, I am taking Ohio State.
Yep. I talked about it earlier. Like I said, if you're just tuned in for the clip, then I am going to actually take Penn State in this one. I think it's a close game. I don't think they control the entirety of the 4 quarters of the game. I just think they find a way to win in the 4th. I think if you look at Ohio State's offensive and defensive line, you're looking at some younger guys, not a ton of experience. and just honestly the weakest points of that team, matching up against Penn State with that very much experienced defensive line, the good O line with and Nick Singleton at running back on offense, and then you look in their secondary, right? They're only sophomore, they're only second underclassman on their team that gets playing time on defense is the nickelback.
Mm-hmm.
He may see some playing time, but that's only because they're just going to bracket the receivers and make them be one-dimensional or make them play make them throw the short ball.
And when you're talking about a sophomore on the field with a bunch of seniors and redshirt seniors,
it's because he's really
you're talking about a baller.
Yeah. It's because he's really good.
There's a lot of
So that's kind of my prediction. I think what's going to happen is Penn State recognizes the mismatch that's going on with Ohio State's wide receivers, and I think they throw 5 DBs out there almost every play.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to throw 5 DBs out there, and they are going to bring some pressure, and they're going to blitz out of the nickel and make Kyle McCord really feel it at quarterback, being in that game. Like I said, I think this is back and forth, but I think Penn State finds a way to win late.
Mm-hmm. I feel that.
Okay, so at this point,
I wouldn't be surprised. Just put that on record.
So at this point, I have Penn State 7-0. You have them 6-1.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're right, and Penn State 6-1, they're probably sitting somewhere around 10-15 with just.
Oh God, I'm thinking way higher than that.
You think? I think probably closer
to 10. To
Ohio
State, I'm looking at like 8, 7,
depending on how they lose.
Yeah,
depending on how they lose.
Sure.
Depending on how they lose.
I think we'd both agree, and of course you have them winning. They lose a close one if they lose.
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying somewhere 8-10?
I'm thinking they're probably, based on what they've probably done with the other teams ahead, they're probably the first one-loss team, if not second, because of who they lost to and how they, I assume, did it. So, again, I have them, and again, at that point, right, above some undefeated teams, probably. So I'm looking at 6-7.
Maybe not.
7-8.
Maybe not, because there's a lot of really good matchups early in the year as well. You're talking about
you're talking about some SEC teams that are going to have one probably. You're talking about some Pac-12 teams, but anyway, maybe 10. 10 is fair.
Yeah, so I was thinking somewhere around 10.
Yeah.
But I do think they win. So if I have them winning, I think they're
3.
They might be top 4.
3 or 4.
For sure, top 5 at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have them 7-0. You have them 6-1. Then they get Indiana at home, beat down.
Bad.
Yeah.
I'm talking about 40.
And then they go to Maryland, beat down.
Indiana could beat them by 40.
Yeah.
Indiana's poor.
Yeah.
They're poor at sports.
Yeah, they could.
Well, football.
All right, so now you get the 10th game of the year.
Yeah, they beat Maryland. Yeah.
They get Michigan at home. So I have them 9-0. You have them 8-1.
Mm-hmm.
You get Michigan at home. They're only a 2.5-point dog in this game. We talked about it earlier. You like Michigan to win and to cover pretty easily. I also like Michigan to win, but in a close one.
Yeah, I mean, and again, back
I
to
said
it,
single
right?
digits. You said what?
I don't recall. Well, I guess let's think about this again. We saw last year. We saw it was just brutal. Again, I said it. I don't think it was going to be. I don't think it's going to be as bad as it was last year. Again, I think it was 41 or 42-17. It was 41-17 was the final score. So, yeah, I mean that was really, really bad. Clifford played like crap. Of course, Clifford's not there anymore, so that's kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at 14. I think they lose by 14.
All right.
Before even getting into anything else.
Yeah, I think they just lose by single digits. I do think they lose. I think it's a close game. I think they really make a case where I think they make a case to the committee that even with this loss to Michigan, being that, in my projection, they would have beaten Ohio State and have a single-digit loss to Michigan. Now they're potentially in the conversation for the playoff, even as a one-loss team, and not having played the Big Ten championship.
That's you think?
Yeah. If they win out, if they can beat Rutgers and Michigan State, which let me just break the news, we both think they do.
Yeah. Man, it just sucks. I wish I could have predicted a different schedule, because I literally predicted what happened this year. But again, it's because I truly believe you're talking about 3 really, really good teams, 2 that are elite, and Penn State that's right on the cusp. You're talking about Michigan being the better of the 2. So again, Michigan sweeps, right? You have Ohio State losing, in my opinion, only to Michigan, which happened this year. I think they're better than every other team on the schedule besides Michigan. And then Penn State doing what we just talked about. And again, I wish I could have predicted it different. I think that's how that is going to go. I don't know. I don't really know how.
Well, let's look at the precedent last year. By the way, Penn State was a really good team. They won the Rose Bowl last
for
year.
sure.
Their only 2 losses were Michigan and Ohio State, and then, like I said, they won the Rose Bowl. So look at the precedent of Ohio State, and then even further back, teams not having to play their conference championship and still getting in the playoffs.
Yeah.
You saw it in that division just last year.
Yeah.
If Penn State can beat the team that did it and lose a close one to Michigan,
There's a real precedent there.
there's not even just a precedent. There's a real conversation to be had. I mean, obviously, it depends about the rest of the field of teams. But I think out of the SEC, you'll probably have your conference champion, and then whoever loses the conference championship will probably have at least one loss because they'd lose that game. But I think there's a great shot that they have 2.
Right.
So whoever you know what I mean. So now they're immediately ahead of that team. You look in the Big 12. I don't think anybody comes out of the Big 12 undefeated.
No.
I mean, I guess there's a shot, but even then, the loser is not. The loser has more than one loss.
Yeah, they're not getting it. Yeah.
The ACC, there's a shot. There's a shot out of the ACC.
Yeah,
but
Clemson or Florida State.
And then you look at what happened in the Pac-12 last year. There was a 4-way tie between 3 lost teams.
Yeah.
To get into that conference. So if you're a 1-loss team with a win over an Ohio State team and a close loss to Michigan, I think you got to be right there, and you got to be somewhere in the top 6. And now it's just about the committee.
And then you're talking about the possible Bamas, the possible LSU's, the possible Tennessees. There it gets a little muddy water because you're talking about basically an identical situation. Yeah. You're talking about a team that possibly lost to a top 2 team and maybe missed the conference like Tennessee this year. You're talking about a similar situation like that. So, but no, you're right. I mean, there's no denying anything you said.
Yeah, I think
they're going to be right there. And again, it's a committee thing at that point.
I think it could be a very similar situation. But look at last year. LSU was a 3-loss team going into the SEC championship, right? Or
3 at that point, but they should have been 2.
Okay, but they were a 3-loss team.
Yeah.
They were a 3-loss team. You get Tennessee, they were only they were a 2-loss team at the time.
Yep.
So even in this scenario,
Bama at 2
even in this scenario, Penn State or Ohio State, whoever it is, and that's why Ohio State got in because they were only a 1-loss team. Mm-hmm. So I think if you can get through your 12-team schedule, have a win over one of these teams, and only be a 1-loss team, you have a really, really good shot to get in.
Now, here's what could throw a wrench in that. A possibility that that none of these teams come out unscathed. If they, not bad, right? If they go 3, if they triangulate, on these
just say it.
That could be a problem. I think the only way, well, it wouldn't matter because you'd have all 1-loss teams. Yep. I don't know how that would go. I think that would be the only problem with 2 of them getting in is if they were all 1-loss.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could have. Yeah. Yep.
I could see that too.
I don't. Yeah.
I can see that too. At this point,
because the problem is you don't know who to put in.
And let me be very clear. I think the winner of the Big Ten comes out of the East. So I think we both we're both predicting Michigan wins the Big Ten.
Yeah. It'll definitely be one of these 3 teams.
And then you're predicting that the second out of the Big Ten would be Ohio State. I'm predicting that it would be Penn State
at 11-1, and the other is 10-2.
Yeah.
Correct. However, if they end up splitting, right, and they all have 1 loss, I don't know, man. I mean, the 1-loss conference champion, of course, gets in. But, yeah, neither of the other teams get a bid, in my opinion. I don't because the problem is then what? You got to score and stuff. I think there's going to end up being, I don't know. I don't know how that would go. I think that'd make it harder.
Crazy.
I think there's some merit to your 1 loss coming from a team that didn't lose.
What do you mean?
I think there's some merit from a 1-loss team's perspective.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Coming from a team that quite literally didn't lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't beat them, but you kind of kept it close, and guess what? No one else beat them.
Yeah.
So I think that's got something to do with it. You look at a team like Tennessee that was like on the cusp like that. If they didn't lose to South Carolina,
who's got 4 or 5 losses, and now it's
To me, they're getting in, but obviously we saw Ohio State do it for the same reason.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But anyway, I think I want to look at Penn State's year last year. Just to clarify, I have them at 10-2. That puts them as a good team. This was not a good team last year. This was a really good football team.
Yeah, they won a New Year's Six Bowl, man.
Yeah, they were 30. They beat Purdue in a close one, but that was to open the year. They beat Ohio, not State, Ohio. in a beatdown. They beat them by 36. They murked Auburn.
Yeah.
Like, just beat the crap out of them.
At Auburn.
Yeah, 41-12 in a game that you and I think I had Auburn in that game. I think you had Penn State. I think I picked Auburn.
Yeah.
Like, in a game that was really, to me, a coin toss. They beat the shit out of them. Penn State beat Central Michigan. They beat Northwestern in a really close, weird game. They got routed by Michigan. That was kind of a hiccup there. But then they went back and put 45 points on Minnesota. They lost what should have been a one-possession game to Ohio State and then beat the crap out of the rest of their schedule. And then, like you said, most importantly, they beat the back-to-back Pac-12 champions in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
By 14 points, by the way.
Yeah.
So, to me, right, because to me, they're such a bubble team because, again, they have two massive speed bumps or mountains really in their schedule. But to go do that to Utah, who we all know how real Utah is,
yeah,
like, damn, So, yeah, I mean, again, I wish I could have predicted everything differently, but that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. After this podcast, do you feel any better about Penn State? Do you feel like
I don't think they're not. Let me just say it as if it's true because I feel that way. They're not the fourth best team in the country. I think they're top 8. I think they're top 9. I don't think they're a top 4 team. Because the problem is, right?
You think there's a real shot? Would you be comfortable betting on Ohio State to beat Penn State?
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with that.
You would?
I don't know at what line, but I'd absolutely take the money line. Yeah, and I wouldn't put lunch on Penn State beating Michigan.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Yeah, I don't think that's even a conversation that needs to be had.
Well, I think it's
right
definitely
now,
a conversation. I think Penn State is good enough to beat anybody on their schedule. I just don't
I disagree.
I mean, how? We
What does
just
Penn
had the
State do
conversation.
No, that's what I'm saying. I don't think they're good enough to beat.
I'm not
Michigan.
talking about will they. I'm talking about can they.
I don't think they can beat Michigan.
I think that's a absolutely ridiculous.
I don't
thing
think
to
they have a
say.
shot. Look what happened last year. I thought they had a chance last year. I think Michigan's got better. I think Penn State's kind of stayed a little bit the same.
Well, let's use the example we just had. We said, we used the example of the SEC that everybody not named Georgia had multiple losses on their schedule.
Yes.
One of those, the team that lost the SEC championship was LSU.
Mm-hmm.
If you would have asked me last year, or if I would have asked you last year, can Texas A&M beat LSU, what would you have said?
No.
Okay, so you would have been utterly wrong.
Mm-hmm. Upsets happen. Sitting here, I'm
No,
not telling you
but
Penn
that's
State
not-
can beat Michigan. I don't think they have a true path to victory that I've seen yet.
But we're not talking about upsets. I'm talking about, is it even possible for Penn State to beat Michigan? And I think, yes, absolutely.
Well, then, yeah. I mean, if we're getting technical, yes.
Well, that's why I said.
Is it possible for App State to beat A&M?
Yeah.
No. But guess what? It happened.
That's
yes, I
because it was
understand.
possible.
That's my point. We're talking about technicalities, yes.
No, but I even.
UL can beat Georgia tomorrow. They can. If everyone on Georgia gets mauled by 7 Lions apiece,
But that's.
they cannot beat them. It's impossible.
But see, now you're taking it too far because that's.
But again,
not
that's what I'm
happened in
talking
those
about.
other games. But I even specified. I said we're not talking about will they. We're talking about can they.
Just like App State can beat A&M, yes, they can. Yes.
I think that's a
Do
crazy
I think they have a
comparison.
shot? Would I bet a 10-point spread in Michigan to cover? Yes. Those are two different answers. No, I don't think they have a shot. Yes, I'd bet Michigan to cover a 10-point spread. So, no, I would tell you if I'm betting on somebody to win by 11, I don't think the other team has a shot. And that's what I'm telling you.
But do you acknowledge that Penn State is significantly closer to Michigan than App State was to A&M?
Absolutely.
A&M
But again,
is
if
to
we're talking
LSU?
about possibility, those things come up. Like, yeah, I think Marshall can beat Notre Dame now that I've seen it. But before that, I would have stopped talking to you. I'd have been like, we need to cancel the podcast. But of course, right, we would have revamped it as soon as it happened. But I'm saying, like, no, dude, I don't think they have a true. Looking at the game, I don't think they win one facet of the game. I think they have less rushing yards. I think they have less passing yards. I think they have less first downs. I think they have far less points right now. No, I don't think they have a shot.
So there's not a single way. There's no way that they could scheme or anything. Like,
I think it's very difficult to scheme against
Let's make
Michigan.
it just ball, just talk X's and
Yeah.
O's. What would Penn State have to do to beat Michigan?
Drew Alar's got to be him, first of all. The problem is, again, everything Penn State does and their identity of their team and how they win and how they end up losing, Michigan just does it better. They're similar football teams. Ohio State's the outlier here. Michigan and Penn State are very similar football teams. Michigan does everything that Penn State does better. And so at that point, right, it's I don't think it's a game. And to clarify, I thought it was going to be a game this year. I don't remember what I picked. I literally think I'm pretty sure I was like, man, Michigan's going to really have to prove it this week. They got to beat them 42-17, and then they beat them 41-17.
You said 45-17.
That's what I'm saying. Like, man, I was right there. And then sure enough, Michigan proved me wrong. I cannot and will not take the slander this year out of my mouth from Michigan.
I've done it twice now. Year. There's a lot of it.
Oh, it's stupid. And then looking back, right? And then now moving forward even, I'm looking at a better Michigan team. I just need to shut up. I'm not saying, man, I bet against them. I have to bet on them this year. No, like they're damn good at football.
And there's no slight to Michigan. I think they're the best team in the conference. I took them to go 12-0. I think they're going to win the Big Ten and be in the playoffs again for the third year in a row. I've got nothing against Michigan.
And I think you said in another podcast you think they win a game this year.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I do. Now, what I am noticing is the same way you were slandering Michigan the last couple of years. I feel like you might just be passing it right down the road to Penn State.
No, they're a 10-2 football team. I think they're one of the better 10-2 teams, in my opinion, that will happen this year. I mean, who was 10-2 right off the top of your head last year? Penn State,
Oregon State,
Washington, right? I mean, there's
USC.
a bunch. USC. That kind of sucks. I was trying to argue something that I didn't believe, and here we are.
What were you trying to argue?
I was trying to argue that Penn State was probably the best 2-loss team last year.
Alabama.
No, I think that's a fact. I don't think they'd have beaten Bama, but I think they would have beaten any of the other teams you named. I don't think they would have beaten Tennessee. I don't know.
All right.
They're really good, dude. I think they're in a tier. I think they're in a tier below the tier below Michigan, though. I do. I think there's a 3-team tier, possibly a 2-team tier with Georgia and Michigan, in my opinion. Maybe Ohio State. I think there's another tier. We'll get into it. And then I think Penn State heads the 3rd tier. And to be clear, it's not like a 7-team tier. I'm talking about like 2 teams and then maybe 3 teams. And I think Penn State's coming in right in this tier right here.
Okay, so I'm not mad at that.
Right.
I would just have Penn State in my 2nd tier.
I think that's fair. And probably at the bottom of it, just to be fair, as a 6.
I would just say somewhere in the group.
Yeah. Because I don't
what
think...
would your tiers be? You said Georgia, Michigan, and then who?
I think I have to go those 2. I don't think I can put Ohio State with them.
I'm not mad at that.
I think Ohio State's got to be your 3 heading the 2nd tier. And then in no particular order, I think you're looking at Bama. I think you're looking at... I think you're looking at Florida State. I need like a word bank is the problem. But no, and see, now I'm not mad, right? Thinking about it, I could see Penn State coming in at the bottom. They finished the year at number 7 last year. That's kind of where I have them. Because I think some other teams have snuck up. I think LSU's got to be in that tier this year. I don't know if I said Tennessee. I think they need to be in that tier this year. So Bama, Tennessee, Florida State, LSU. I'm done with SEC. Washington, Oregon, and Penn State. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think they're in the 2nd
Florida
tier.
State?
Clemson, yeah.
Florida State?
Yeah, I said Florida State.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you've listed 10 teams.
Right, and realistically, right, if I wasn't filming right now and we really got on paper and started to break it down, I'd probably have a tier break there, and Penn State would sit on my 2-3 line. I think they're about a 7 or 8 seeded team in my head.
Yeah, I think I'd probably have Penn State above the Oregons and Washingtons.
Really?
Yeah. I think they're just
they dismantled Utah, so
I think
and Utah's in there for me.
Yeah, I think they're just probably a more complete team in terms of offense and defense. They're obviously the West Coast teams are more explosive on offense,
right?
In the pass game, but I think Penn State's probably just more a more complete team. I got them in my 2 tier.
Okay. Which teams that I named would you not have had there?
I said Oregon and Washington.
That's right. USC, is USC in there? I didn't name them.
No, I wouldn't put USC in there.
But you love Florida State, Clemson, LSU, Tennessee,
Florida State
Bama.
And Clemson.
LSU, Tennessee, Bama.
I'd probably leave Tennessee out.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I don't hate that. I think Penn State's better than Tennessee.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. Absolutely.
So I'd probably go Georgia, Michigan. I agree with you there. And then I'd go Ohio State, Penn State, Clemson, Florida State.
LSU, Bama.
Bama, LSU.
Okay. I'm not mad at that. And see, me too, right? I think I'm agreeing. I'd have Penn State towards the bottom of that list specifically. Above Clemson, probably only. So again, right? I'm right back in my 7 or 8 seed. I like when my thoughts, when I say 2 different things, end up coming together. And they kind of have been in
Two
this
things
segment.
you haven't thought of yet, like you
Yes.
haven't thought all the way through.
I'm like, no. Yeah, that's that. And no, dude, it's this. And then I'm like, well, shit, yeah. I mean, yeah. They're my 7 or 8 seed. I love that.
All right.
Don't ask me to rank the others.
All right, perfect.
So
Hey, if you made it this far, follow us on
Yeah.
Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. Like, comment, subscribe here. We appreciate you.
shout outs to the clip page.
Yeah.
Get on that.
The,
Or did you say that already?
the clips page. It's just it's at Culture Media LA. I link every single
Cool.
the links in every single long form podcast. And if you do watch the clips, it's got a link back to here.
You're
So
going to ruin your day?
go ahead.
You're going to have to put it right there.
I'm not going
Yep.
to. I'm not going to. Though.
It'll be right there, guys. So,
And it won't be me. It'll be Mikey. So
Mikey, right in this area here, buddy. Alrighty. I got a nice little gesture. You did this, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.